Welcome to another weekly Forex forecast, traders. As always, we will start with the DXY, the US dollar. So we've been talking about this last couple weekly Forex forecasts. We've been talking about how we have a monthly and weekly area of demand in control. Why did we see the dollar, rally from here to here? Well, in my opinion, is because we had a weekly demand in control. Not only that, these dotted lines you see here, represents a monthly area of demand. So we have a weekly demand in control, and that is why we saw a nice rally up. I mean, we got all the way up to pretty much a little bit above 102. And if you look now, this past week, obviously massive drop in the DXY, and it's a little bit tricky. What I think we could be seeing happen here is if you go back here, again, this is the overall monthly demand here. And we have two weekly demand zones inside of the monthly demand. In my opinion, this is a much high quality demand compared to that one. This one is way better. So what I think we are potentially seeing here on the DXY is that just that quick initial reaction off the weekly chart, off the weekly demand, but it looks to me like we could be pulling back down to this better weekly demand at 97 before getting a bigger move. So in my opinion, I do think it's more likely to get, a move from here to maybe above 105 again. It's more likely we get that from the zone at the extreme rather than this one. So don't be too worried if you're bullish the dollar. I think it's possible we do retrace down to that weekly demand and rally up, but it doesn't mean, we might definitely continue to see some weakness here in the DXY. And if you look at a 4-hour chart, this is what we really need to be focusing on here. So it might be a little bit confusing with all the lines, but we have the overall trend line here, right? We have the valleys and peaks, whatever. That's the downward trend line. We have a new updated trend line here as well. And I'm going to keep both of them on my charts, and I want you guys to have them both on your charts as well. So what I'm going to be waiting for here is I'm going to be watching this trend line. If we remove this first trend line, that's going to be a bullish sign. If we remove both trend lines, that's going to be pretty bullish as well. However, the biggest bullish signal is going to be this, where we not only break both the opposing downward trend lines, but we create a peak and a valley and a higher high and create a 4-hour upward trend line. To me, that is going to signal, hey, that weekly demand that came in control down here, it's coming in control again, and we are looking good and strong, and we should continue to look for longs. We did get it back here, right? So the monthly and weekly demand came in control right here. We created a nice 4-hour upward trend. Looks like it was some sort of fake out to the downside below the trend line, and then we actually continued the upward trend. It got a little bit extended here, as you can see, and now we actually have the opposite trend as we pull back into that weekly demand again for the second time. So monitor both of these trend lines. Just this trend line breaking, and then let's say we continue to respect this trend line, it's not going to be the best signal for long entries, right? Because this is the overall trend line. So these are the trend lines I'm going to be watching, and even if we break above them, we have a very nice 4-hour supply above that we easily could see some sort of move off of. So we even have that to get passed through as well. But in the meantime, it is looking weak on the dollar. I think day trading short dollar pairs could be good. We just got to be careful, right? Because the higher time frame demand is about to become in control again. But the trends are weak to the downside. So to recap, on the DXY, we certainly need to continue to watch the 4-hour downward trend line as we approach the weekly and the monthly demand again for the second time. Alrighty, on to the forecast. For the Euro US dollar, we had the weekly supply come in control up here. Looks like we've based out and we are continuing to go up. So this weekly supply, not really giving it too much weight. Obviously, it's just the opposite of the DXY. If we look at the dollar chart here, I think the story that's taken place, well, first of all, I was really bummed out. I really wanted to pull back down to this daily demand. It was a good demand zone. And to me, it looks like this was just a trend line fake out. So it's definitely suggesting we are going to target the high rather than pull back down to this demand, unfortunately. But even if we do, I mean, it's kind of a liquidity trap here. If you've been following my channel for a while, we talk about these liquidity searches as well, and it's some sort of support level before a demand zone. So I think it's great for a potential dip buying opportunity at 1.098. I know that's a far time away. I'm just saying there's a level on top of level here. There's a lot of demand down there if we do actually get a pullback. But to me, it looks like we are faking out, and we are just off to the races to the high there. On the Euro US dollar. So how do we go about and trade the US dollar at this point? Well, on the 4-hour chart, not only did we break this downward trend line, right, we had an opposing downward trend line. We now have a 4-hour upward trend line, and that's as we come off of this previous 4-hour demand zone. So if we kind of zoom out here, we had 2 4-hour demand zones, 1, 2. I pointed out both of these demand zones. Now this trade was a losing trade, but this demand zone worked beautifully for over a 3-to-1, and profits are still running. This was a trade that I called out in the previous weekly Forex forecast video, so that is why you should probably hit that subscribe button if you want to continue to watch these and catch trades like those. So hit that subscribe button and hit that like button if you guys are enjoying this video. So how do we trade the euro now? Well, with this nice trend line to the upside, you guys need to make sure you are copying this exact trend line. I think looking for longs on a 15-minute time frame is going to be good. So even if we pull back, test the trend line, that's fine. As long as you are trading on a 15-minute time frame, I think it's completely reasonable to get in long. Even if we get a pullback down to this 4-hour demand, hopefully it's some sort of trend line fake out like we were just talking about on the daily chart, right into our beautiful rally base rally area of demand. I like this demand zone. The basing is completely symmetrical and perfect. The move away is nice. It removed a trend line and some clear pivot highs here as well. So I really like that demand zone for a pullback down to that demand. So that is what you could be waiting for here as well. And again, as long as this trend line's holding, 15-minute time frame longs are going to be good. And now look, I am a supply and demand trader. That does not mean you have to trade supply and demand. All I'm going to say is if the trend line's holding, whatever you trade, indicators, chart patterns, support resistance, SMC, ICT, whatever you trade, as long as you are doing it on a 15-minute chart and as long as this trend line is holding, trust me, it's going to be a pretty damn good idea to continue to trade long with the overall trend on the 4-hour time frame. But remember, you got to be doing it on the day trading time frames until we get a new daily trend. Alrighty, on to the forecast for gold, XAUUSD. I'm a little bit bummed out, and this is why. Thought we were going to get a pullback down to that weekly demand, but based on Friday's price action and basically price action all week, gold is really taking off. Now, usually when we wick like this down to a demand zone, it usually represents a lot of demand. So in my opinion, even if we do see a nice pullback down to the 30.93 area, I think it's a fantastic dip buying opportunity. Even if you want to get invested in some physical metals as well, I think it's a great dip buying opportunity on gold. Now, the reason I don't think we're going to pull back down to that weekly demand is this. On the daily chart, we had this daily demand. This daily demand was pointed out back in April. You can go back and watch my previous Forex forecast. We caught that beautiful move off that daily demand zone. That daily demand was removed by this supply. So this was a key significant area of supply that could have held up price. In my opinion, it was possible that price was just going to pull back up to the daily supply before retracing back down to that weekly demand. Now that this daily supply has been removed, we still have a downward trend line to get past, but in my opinion, we're probably going to break it with ease. That's just from my experience. This supply has been taken out. So in my opinion, we have no real good evidence to suggest price is going to retrace back on gold at this time. So how do we go about and trade gold right now? We have a very nice upward trend line on the charts right now, and this is why it's beneficial to join the membership, because you get this trend line. You get my whole entire chart layout every day. And this trend line's looking good. So as long as this 1-hour trend line's holding, that means 5-minute time frame longs are going to be good. Even if we pull back down to this 1-hour demand zone at 32.42, I think it's a good dip buying opportunity. It's not bad. The demand zone itself is actually really good, but the issue with it is that we're so far away from it now. It would kind of make me a little bit nervous, but nonetheless, you are trading with the higher time frames. That is why I think it is a decent demand zone pullback. We also have a 1-hour supply from back here. This supply was created back at the start of May, and I actually would have loved a pullback up to this supply for a potential counter trend setup at 33.81, but we just didn't get it, right? We barely pulled back into it. It is a little hidden area of supply. It's been so long since the supply was created. I'm not giving it much weight. Maybe we could see a small move off of it. The reason I'm pointing it out is because I want to see what removes it, because any demand zone that removes it is going to be a pretty good demand zone that we can get in long at. That's why I want to have that supply, and that is why I always keep the old zones on my charts to see what removes it. So to recap on gold here, we have a nice 1-hour trend to the upside. We are removing higher time frame supply as we speak. So as long as this 1-hour trend line's holding, 5-minute time frame longs are going to be good. Pullbacks down to that 1-hour demand represents a nice dip buying opportunity, or if we continue to push up and remove that supply, any demand zone there is going to be a good dip buying opportunity as well on gold. Alrighty, on to the forecast for the USDJPY. So if you look here on the weekly time frame, we have a clear area of liquidity here, support trap. So in my opinion, that is where we are headed to kind of target that liquidity there. And this is looking very similar to the DXY actually. So in my opinion, we could go lower and most likely are going to be targeting that liquidity. Now, on the daily time frame here, we are into this daily area of demand. Now, we have had a level on top of level. We've had this level break. This level to me looks like it's going to break. So it is a little bit sketchy to trade that zone now. So at that point, we need to be waiting for some sort of confirmation. But first, we have a daily supply up here. So I think it's a good supply zone for shorts. I just got to point that out before I move to the next chart. But since we're so far into the zone, I've seen it happen tons of times where we push this far in, then all of a sudden, boom. So it is possible. It's not my favorite situation. I would much rather see a nice move with no drawdown. So it is looking weak, which means we need to look for pretty much a confirmation entry model. And what that's going to look like is pretty much we need to follow this downward trend line here. And I'm actually going to adjust it now because it does need some adjusting. And actually, yeah, there it is. That's the way I'm going to adjust it now, from there to there. So as long as this trend line is being respected, we could expect price to go down. So I will say, if you are bearish, you think, Kevin, you're wrong, we're going to continue to go down the USDJPY, which actually I did say that's going to happen. But if you want, the reason it's a little bit sketchy is because the daily demand is in control. But as long as this downward trend line's holding, I think looking for shorts on a 5-minute chart is going to be fine. However, if you want to look for longs, we need to basically see a move like this, where we respect the daily demand and then remove the downward trend line and create a 1-hour area of demand. Now, this is something we'll be watching out for throughout the week in the daily market breakdown videos. If you want to trade alongside myself and the community, join the Diamond membership for exclusive access to our daily market breakdown videos and catch trades like these. Plus, dive deep with our full-length forecast covering 26 plus markets, our interactive Sunday Zoom sessions, and personal homework to sharpen your strategy. And you'll also join our private Discord group for direct access to me and unlock a complete library of A to Z video lessons to master supply and demand trading. Don't miss out. Let's level up your trading. Links in the description down below. So that is what I'm going to be watching here. Basically, all trading is going to revolve around this 1-hour downward trend line. If it continues to hold, again, shorts are going to be fine. If it breaks, that is going to be pretty much our long signal. But my gut feeling is telling me we are going to be targeting this liquidity and dropping down below the 140 level on the USDJPY. Alrighty, on to the forecast for the GBPUSD. We pretty much target this liquidity here. We are at a weekly supply. This is not a good weekly supply zone. Not only was it created in 2022, which is so long ago, it's not even really a good supply zone anyways. And look at the aggressive push we are seeing into it. Now, that can kind of go both ways. I've seen it work. It's a double-edged sword. I've seen it where it just blasts through, and I've seen it where it's kind of trapping everyone, then we get a massive spike down. So I don't really look at a rival to a zone, but in my opinion, this is looking really aggressive. Not only that, we have very nice basing here as well, which kind of looks like we might be basing up for a new potential weekly demand right here. It's not there yet, but it's something to consider. So it is looking really, really strong on the GBPUSD, even on the daily time frame here. This thing is really not even slowing down at all. I mean, we did here, but overall, it's looking really, really strong. So at this point, we could be waiting for this supply to be removed on the daily chart. Any daily demand is going to represent a great dip buying swing trading opportunity. On the British pound, we have a couple options for trading at this time. We have a very nice upward trend on the 1-hour chart. So a couple options here. As long as this 1-hour trend line is being respected, that means 5-minute time frame longs are going to be good. And I like a pullback down to that nearest 1-hour demand at 1.345. I think it's a good base rally demand that removed an opposing zone. Or if we remove this supply, any demand zone there is going to be a good demand zone to trade as well. So that is the 1-hour chart. Let's go over to the 4-hour time frame. We could also be looking at this. We have a nice 4-hour trend to the upside. So as long as this 4-hour trend line is being respected, 15-minute time frame longs are going to be good as well. And a pullback down to this 4-hour demand at 1.33 is going to be pretty good as well. This demand zone removed not only a pivot high, but a downward trend line as well. So it is looking really strong on the pound right now. Day trading longs are going to be really good. and I like the pullbacks down to some of those 1 hour and 4 hour demand zones that we were talking about here on the GBPUSD. Alrighty, on to the forecast for the USDCAD. This is the country I am currently living in, the country I am from. Let me know where you guys are from in the comments down below. So on the weekly time frame here, we were talking about this weekly demand, and this represents our profit margin. That is where I think we are most likely headed. We did hesitate here for the past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. Basically the past month, we have clearly hesitated, but ultimately I thought we were going to continue to push down because supply and demand acts like magnets, guys. It really does. It's absolutely incredible. So I think we will be pulling back down to this weekly demand, and I think it's a great dip buying opportunity, in my opinion, on the USDCAD. So on the daily chart, we have a very nice daily downward trend line. We technically have a new one here as well. I'm going to go ahead and draw that now. Not my favorite zone ever, or sorry, not my favorite downward trend line ever. I do prefer to watch the overall one, but in my opinion, we're going to need to be watching both of these downward trend lines. This is kind of the nearest one. The overall one is going to be important as well. As long as both of these are holding, like if we break above this one, that's fine. If this one holds, we're going to expect more downward pressure. This daily supply up here is a fantastic swing trading opportunity, in my opinion. If price pulls up to that supply, you could definitely be looking for day trading shorts in there as well. I'm just saying. But in the meantime, we have a daily downward trend. We have clear profit margin down to that weekly demand. In my opinion, it is shorts all the way here on the USDCAD. I see no reason for shorting. So for one, on the 1 hour chart, we have a very nice 1 hour downward trend line. Unfortunately, I don't really see too many zones here as far as how I do my chain analysis and everything. I'm not going to get into detail on that in this weekly Forex forecast. If you want, you can watch my tips playlist. I talk more about it. But we have a nice 1 hour downward trend line. So as long as this downward trend line is good or holding, 5-minute time frame shorts are going to be good. If you look at a 4 hour chart here, we had two significant areas of demand. This one we got a nice trade off of. This one was a loser. So one good one bad one. But at the end of the day, both of them are removed. And this supply here was removed, or sorry, this demand was removed by this base drop, kind of little hidden 4 hour supply zone at 1.379. Not my favorite supply zone ever, I will admit. I'd rather it be up here somewhere, and the basing's kind of big, whatever. It's not bad. The move away is pretty good as well. So I will say, if we do get a pullback up to this 4 hour supply, it could be good for a potential short trade. There is profit margin. If you were to just take this entire trade, there's profit margin down to that weekly demand. So it is a good potential trading setup with good profit margin. If you don't feel comfortable with just with an entry, stop loss, and take profit, what you could be doing is waiting for the supply to be hit, looking for little supply zones to be formed on a 15-minute chart, aka confirmation as we contact that 4 hour area of supply on the USDCAD. So overall, it is looking weak. We still have tons of profit margin to the downside. If you just take a risk reward tool at this 4 hour area of supply, let's take a look. So all the way down to the weekly demand, we are looking at a 5-to-1 potential trading opportunity at that 4 hour area of supply. In my opinion, that is worth it. It's a good supply zone. If you want to refine your entry and confirm it, that's fine. Since it's not the best zone ever on the day trading timeframes, I would agree with that as well. Alrighty, on to the forecast for the Aussie US dollar. This is my opinion. This is what bad price action looks like, at least for a supply and demand trader. I don't see anything for supply in here. I don't see anything for demand here. So there's not a lot to go off of on the weekly chart, and it's just kind of sideways. Even on the daily time frame, yeah, we broke above the trend line, but I mean, how do we judge what's going to happen off this price action? Very, very difficult. If you can trade in that sideways price action, good for you. I can't. I really don't like it. If you just look at this entire kind of broad range here, let me just change this so it makes a little bit more sense. Do something like that. If you just look at this overall range, you can see that it's a sideways price action, and this is not good. So what I as a supply and demand trader like to see is a clear break out of this range, maybe creating demand here and getting a pullback to the demand zone that broke the entire range. And this is the same thing for supply. Let's say we push down here, break the range with supply. Any zone that breaks this range is going to resemble strength. So that's what I'd be waiting for a clear break out of that range. Now, it doesn't mean you have to. We actually caught a beautiful trade off this 1 hour demand zone. I mean, at least I did today, just for my one-to-one strategy. And I wish I could have held that far. But that's a beautiful setup there. Off that 1 hour demand zone, we basically had a 1 hour downward trend line. That trend line was removed by this demand, and we got a beautiful trade off it. So that trade worked out beautifully on the Aussie US dollar. So what I will say now is if we get a pullback down to this 1 hour demand, it's not as high quality. It's not my favorite, but we definitely could see some sort of move off the zone. If you guys want more training on supply and demand as well, so you can identify trades like this, check out the PDF that comes with the membership. You can see full course PDF, absolutely incredible information on here to help level up your trading, especially when it comes to supply and demand zone trading. So check it out. Comes with the Dime membership as well. You definitely will not regret it. So we have a 1 hour trend to the upside. We could be looking for longs on a 5-minute chart. That's really all I'm seeing, except unless we get a pullback down to this demand. But even if we do, I kind of like the demand zone that's even below all this liquidity here. A little bit tricky right now in the Aussie. I wish that this, I wish price was right here so I could have pointed out this demand zone for you guys, but I didn't even get to point it out to the members because it was formed in the middle of the night. So I didn't even get to point it out to the members. But a beautiful trade off that zone. For now, you can continue to look for longs on a 5-minute chart, but in my opinion, it's best to wait until we kind of explode out of that range on the Aussie US dollar. Alrighty, on to the forecast for the USDCHF. So we did target the liquidity here. Clear area of support. Looks like we are going to continue to go down. We have enough profit margin down to at least below 0.80, just right below it. If you look at the daily chart, I didn't have this daily area of supply based on my entire chain analysis here. But if you look, we got a beautiful reaction off this kind of drop-based drop area of selling or supply, whatever you want to call it. Now, with that being said, we created a beautiful 4-hour supply zone. So basically, usually when we're looking at a daily chart, we want to look for confirmation on an H1, but sometimes you will also get it on an H4. And this is actually what we got here. We got an H4 confirmation coming off of the daily area of supply. So in my opinion, it is a great supply zone short up there. Not only that, we have liquidity right before it, so it's a great shorting opportunity. The basing's nice. The overall move away is pretty good. It removed a significant trend line, liquidity before the zone. I really, really like the zone. I think it's great for potential short trade at 0.831 on the 4-hour time frame. In the meantime, we have a nice 4-hour downward trend line, so if you don't think we're going to pull back up to that, that's fine. You could be day trading short a 15-minute chart as long as the 4-hour downward trend line is holding. And again, guys, that is a 4-hour supply zone coming off of a daily supply zone. So this is what I like to call multiple time frame analysis trade. It is a very high probability in my opinion. Could it lose? Absolutely, and I am prepared for it. Now, on the USD Swiss, I really don't have any price action down below, so we are going to start something new today, and we have a 1-hour supply zone right up here. So in my opinion, this is a decent drop-based drop supply zone at 0.825 that we could see a move off of on the 1-hour time frame. I like this supply because it removed that low there. I usually don't do things like this, but in my opinion, that is a good supply zone, and I just don't have any opposing zones over here, so I am drawing that one right now. So that is our supply zone to look for shorts at. That is the nearest one, but in the meantime, it is day trading shorts all the way, and we just need to wait for the 1-hour supply and the 4-hour supply zones to be hit on the USD Swiss franc. Alrighty, on to the forecast for crude oil. Last but definitely and certainly not least, this is a very clear looking chart with lots of zones on it. So if you look at the weekly chart, we have overall weekly downward trend. But when we have a weekly supply like this, a lot of the times we will see a retracement up to that weekly area of supply and then a move down, which means there's money to be made on the way up. But I'm just pointing out the overall higher time frames are definitely signaling weakness on crude oil. So on the daily chart, there's really not a lot to go off of here. Pretty much just going sideways in this range, but the overall trend is down, which pretty much just represents the weekly trend. So that's pretty much what we are focused on here. We have a couple of options on the 1-hour chart. I really like our options, really. If you are bullish and you think, hey, Kevin, I think you're right. I think we're going to pull up to that weekly supply. That's a completely reasonable thought to have. Really, the only way I would trade it is one, we have two options to trade it. We could wait for this 1-hour demand zone at 60.89 for a pullback entry down to that demand. It's a good demand zone. It removed a trend line. Not a fan of the basing, but the move away is good. It removed the trend line. It qualifies as a demand zone pullback setup, in my opinion. That is one option for longs. The second option for long is to create a upward trend on the 1-hour chart. Then we could look for longs on a 5-minute time frame. That is it. So we either wait for this to be hit or wait for a trend to look for longs. If you're bearish, we have a 1-hour supply above at 62.99. I think it's a good drop-based drop supply for a potential short trade. I really like the zone. It removed not only a demand zone, but an upward trend line as well. The basing is nice, the initial move away is good, and the overall move away is good as well. So that is our nearest term 1 hour supply zone and 1 hour demand zone on oil. You can trade accordingly. Now, on the 4 hour chart, what I really like is this 4 hour supply zone up above at 66.26. We've reacted off this resistance trap area 3 times now, so a pullback up to that supply is going to represent a good trading opportunity in my opinion as well. If you want to watch the full-length forecast and get my daily chart analysis and daily market breakdown videos, join the Diamond membership. Links in the description down below.